Hi, everyone. This is Calvin with rightthinking.com, and it's Friday, May 22nd, 2026, and I'm just coming at you with a video today. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know from my first one where I did an overview of what the podcast is about, I said that I would have three major topics and that I would do an index video about all three of them. So I've done the first two, which is a music index about who I am musically, because I'll speak a lot about music probably. Also, the other one was politics, and so I did that one. And so the third one today is about who I am as a person of faith. And so, yeah, it's just an index video outlining that, because a lot of the information that comes on this podcast will deal with one of those three topics: faith, politics, or music. Not exclusively. I definitely do have plans to talk about some other things, but those three topics are the main ones. And then on the website, there'll be an other category, and that's where I'll put everything that's not really centered around those three things. So anyhow, I just wanted to tell you about who I am as a person of faith, because that will help you understand, hopefully, where I'm coming from with the videos that I put out eventually about faith topics. So my dad, German heritage, so he grew up in the Lutheran church. And then my mom is British, Scottish, English heritage. So she was brought up in the Free Methodist denomination. So when they got together, they decided for their own kids, they wanted to do something that was neither of those churches, something that was unique for them and the family they were creating. So we were all brought up mostly in the Christian and Missionary Alliance Church. Towards the end, when I was a teenager, we sort of switched to Plymouth Brethren eventually, but not for very long. Most of my upbringing, most of my formation is in the Christian and Missionary Alliance Church. So that is, if you know your church stuff, their theology is Arminian. Okay, so I grew up with that. Faith was all around me. I grew up close to my mother's family, so they were very much into practicing their faith, the Free Methodist denomination, and so faith was all around me. I wouldn't say that I really caught on to it myself personally for a while, but I did go to church for the most part. I even went to Bible camp in the summer and things like that. But I would not really say that I was truly converted or born again. I didn't have sort of Jesus on the throne of my heart. I wasn't trying to sort of live for him. He was just sort of an afterthought that was kind of cool, right? So during elementary school, I was picked on a bit. So you may hear some of that stuff come out a little bit when I start talking about mental health issues. But yeah, I was picked on a bit. I went to judo. My parents sent me there to help me defend myself better, which actually worked, but nonetheless, I was picked on. And so we grew up in this one town called Vernon in the North Okanagan, and I grew up there till I was 15. And then when we moved when I was 15 to the town south of there, Kelowna, and I knew that I had the chance to sort of reinvent my image. And so I decided, with people that didn't know me from anything, I was going to party and just become popular. And I was, but very quickly, I also found it unfulfilling. So luckily, God had put some people in my life at high school whom I had gone to Bible camp with when I was a younger boy. And they knew me. We were still friendly, even though they could see I wasn't at the time living for God. But they still talked to me, reached out to me and stuff like that. And few of them were very persistent in a really gentle way. So to make a long story short, is the combination of just knowing that all that partying wasn't leading anywhere, and then the persistent witness of my friends, I decided, I'd come home, I think, from a youth group event with one of these friends, Andy. I won't say his last name, but Andy, you know who you are. And in his truck there, parked outside of my parents' house on September 30th, 1984, I prayed the prayer and became born again. And from that moment, I started to live for Jesus and cling to him and try to be conformed to his image. not perfectly. Of course, I've had my ups and downs, and mental health has had a factor on that, especially when it comes to some spiritual abuse things, which I'll talk about in another video. But yeah, but in general, I was definitely on that path and living for God. So I would say that for me, theologically, I would say, and this is me speaking now as someone in his late 50s, that I've sort of come to a rest where I am theologically as a Christian. So I'm basically mostly Arminian in my theology, although I do believe sort of slightly in the semi-Pelagian, some things like, for example, conditional salvation and things like that. So some people might raise their eyeballs at that, but it's what I believe. It's what I understand from Scripture. Okay, I'm not certain that there is a sin nature and things like that. We do sin, but I'm not sure there's a sin nature. So everything I say is because this is how I understand Scripture, and I'm certainly open to learning more. I wouldn't say I know anything perfectly. I mean, 1 Corinthians 13 tells us we won't know everything perfectly until we're on the other side of the veil, right? So it's possible I could be incorrect on some things, but that's where I am as of today. Like I say, May 22nd, 2026. I'm also a young earth creationist. I do believe in the literal 7 days of creation. I believe in a conservative interpretation of Scripture. I believe in the inerrancy of Scripture, that when it was written, it was without any error. And I even believe that modern translations are, for the most part, good. Some are better than others. Personally, I read a literal translation of the Scriptures. I don't like people to get creative and fancy when they do an interpretation of Scripture for me. So I'd rather figure that out myself with Bible aids and things like that. But anyhow, so yeah, I do trust the Scripture. It's the guiding thing in my life. Yeah, and I do obviously believe in the Protestant 66 books. Yeah, I'm not Catholic or anything, so I don't believe in the Apocrypha or anything like that. So I do want to say that just after I became born again, there was an author whose books I felt God directing me to read, and I really feel that it had an impact on me. So that is the author Josh McDowell. His book here, this is volume 1, and here's volume 2, Evidence That Demands a Verdict. These two books by Josh McDowell were very influential on me. So, and by the way, his books have been revised since that time. I believe they're combined, 1 and 2 are combined into one book now. And his one son, who is also an apologist, has helped him revise it over the years. So the information in the revised version is probably more up to date than this one. But anyhow, at the time, that's what I had, and it was very good because it showed me that the Christian belief wasn't just based on faith alone, or belief without any kind of foundation, but there was actually real reasons to believe what Scripture claimed. Right? There's archaeological evidence and the prophetic influences. There's so many arguments that prove that the Bible is a book of Scripture that can be trusted. And if you can trust it, then you should think about reading its message and maybe implementing it in your life. Because if it is a book from the true and living God who created this universe, and he wrote this book for us to understand him better and figure out the way it is that we can rejoin him, then it's an important book to read, right? So Josh McDowell's books they were really helpful to me, to just sort of get me grounded in the faith, that it wasn't just blind faith, but I had legitimate reasons to believe in the faith. Okay, so if you are struggling with any of that, first of all, you can reach out to me in the comments, of course, but also seek out that book at a local Christian bookstore, Evidence That Demands a Verdict by Josh and now his son, Sean McDowell. And I think it'll be a really good resource. If you don't have the time to read such a lengthy book, Josh McDowell has another little pocket-sized book called More Than a Carpenter, and I'd encourage you to read that one. Okay. There's other good Christian apologists more than just Josh McDowell. By the way, there's many good ones, actually. So if you prefer the writing style of someone else, by all means, go for it. Just make sure that hopefully they're writing in support of Scripture. So if you have any questions or want recommendations, by all means, reach out to me and I'll be happy to tell you about what I would say. Okay. So I'm in my early 20s now, and because I was newly saved and happy about being a Christian, I wanted to give God some of my life to be used in a ministry setting. So I had friends that had gone off to a organization called Youth with a Mission, YWAM, and so I decided to go there too. So I went to the Maui base, and it was at the Maui base that I think God built on this foundation of that Josh McDowell had put on me. God, and I do believe that God kind of supernaturally gifted to me a gifting and an interest and a precision in dealing with people who are in cults, and more specifically Mormons, but also Jehovah's Witnesses as well. But yeah, when I was in Maui, I just became voracious in reading everything about Mormons and stuff like that, books that contradict and show why their belief system is incorrect and things like that. I read their own books to get that under my belt. I've read the Book of Mormon myself 3 times from cover to cover, as well as their other 2 scriptures. So yeah, and then also Jehovah's Witnesses too. I have a really big heart for them too. So I actually have an interest in all people with that are in incorrect belief systems. It's debatable with some people whether Roman Catholics are cultic or not. So I do believe that you can be Roman Catholic and be Christian, but the doctrine itself, which is what I'm talking about, it's problematic. I have a copy of the Catholic Catechism, 950 pages, and I went through it one winter, and I outlined 50 problems that I have with Catholic Catechism according to the scripture. So I made a document about that. So it's not just Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses; it's other things too. Christian Science and a whole bunch of things. I'm more knowledgeable and more skilled though with Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses. I've helped lead outreaches to Mormons and things. So yeah, I'm quite interested in them. I love those people very dearly, and the ones that get past what I'm doing with them and see where my heart's at, that I really do actually love them. And even if they don't change their beliefs, I know that I have made lots of friends with Mormons. Yeah. Anyhow, so because of God giving me that gifting for Mormons and stuff, I just that became a defining thing in my life as an adult, is just helping to lead outreaches and stuff like that. It morphed into other things too. I became interested in reaching out to Muslims. I know there's a lot of talk in the world today about what to do with Muslims and immigration and things like that. But I would just, and a lot of those things might be legitimate. I would just add though, what are you doing to try and get them into the kingdom? Okay, because that's the ultimate thing. The other political questions and stuff might be important, but not as important as their eternal state, right? If they end up going to hell because they don't know Jesus, then that's a problem. And if you had an opportunity while they were alive to influence them, why didn't you take it, right? So I remember the first time, this is even before I had read the Quran. And of course, I've read the Quran 2 times now, cover to cover, but this is before I'd read it the first time. I was at a outdoor festival, and I had a display next to their display, and I knew that they would be coming next door to talk to me eventually. So after I got my display up and running, they did come over, 6 of them at once, and they started talking to me about Islam and to try and get me to convert. And I engaged with them. I was polite. They were polite with me. I engaged, I answered their questions, I shot questions at them, and it wasn't more than honestly about 5 minutes before they were finding reasons to leave the conversation because they didn't have answers to anything that I was saying. And that was before I had even read the Quran. All it was me responding to them based on my apologetics knowledge and influence about the Bible and about God and things like that, that were influenced by that book. So it's actually pretty easy to answer about 90% of the objections that there are against Christianity. If you just have a basic knowledge in basic apologetics yourself, you can go a long way with just that. And then there's maybe 10% where you might need specializations. I do believe that my Christian beliefs and can be applied to political situations as well, to comment on social culture. So if you see me in some of my political broadcasts, I might say things from a Christian ethics perspective. And that's because I believe that, well, first of all, Christianity is true, and therefore the ethics that are contained in the Bible are true, and they're applicable to everyone, and they're a better way of governing ourselves. So that's why I would speak against secular humanism and things like that. Anything that that is contrary to God's scripture. So, and that's again just because I know that Christianity is true, Jesus is real, and so what he says in the scriptures is true, and that includes the ethics code that goes along with it. Okay. Okay, we are under a new covenant for sure, but nonetheless, the ethics of all of Scripture are still applicable. So, anyhow, I will let you go because that's about all I need to say about this topic. So, I want to thank you for hanging out here today, and I will start doing videos on more specific content after today because I'm done with my general index videos. I hope you've enjoyed them, and I look forward to more specific content from me in the future. Okay. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.